There literally is nothing that puts Garcia on the trip in June. Nothing. Oh, we didn't happen to get the cell phone records for Sigfredo. Really? No records from the hotel? You got the hotel records from the second trip. Luis Rivera, Budget Inn, 2 people staying there. But he supposedly stayed at the Budget Inn on the first trip. You didn't get no records? What excuse did you get again? Oh, we were digging through an attic of paperwork and couldn't find it. Excuses. Then they mentioned something about a drug dealer saw him here. Did a drug dealer, besides Luis Rivera, testify in this courtroom? No. And the murder doesn't happen in June. Charles had all intentions of breaking up with her. You will see in the text messages, members of the jury, when Charles says to his friend, Sully, they're going on a trip to the Keys. This is in June. This is the goodbye tour. He was going to start breaking up with Katie, assuming that the murder was going to go down. That is why Garcia was so mad when he saw them together on July 1st. It's a couple weeks later that Dan Markel is murdered in cold blood in his driveway. And then what's even more telling, members of the jury, just like that, right after the murder, the communications are no longer romantic. I just want to be friends. You're really going to break up with the girl or that you just conspired to commit murder with? There's not one thing in his text messages, nothing, that supports. They have all of his text messages from the day of the murder, the day after the murder, the day before the murder. They don't show that to you because there's nothing in there that shows that she knew anything about the homicide. In fact, the conversations are just so obscure that that's not the conversation that people would be having knowing that a homicide is going to take place. Now, they also make this big deal about how, oh, look, the cell phone towers say that, oh, she's driving up to Yindra and she's going to drop off the kids because she needs to go what? If she was planning this murder and knew it was going to happen, you don't think she would have made plans to have someone else watch the kids way in advance? I'm just going to wait on the night of and try to get Yindra to watch the kids then? That is the planning that's taking place in this homicide? That she has to get the day of the murder Yindra to watch her kids? And she told you. He told me that his brother was in a car accident. She doesn't even remember him saying that because that was just nothing. But what does he tell June and everybody else? My ex-brother-in-law was murdered. He never says that to her. Never. And let's not forget the day after the murder, because they're trying to paint this picture that Katie came and delivered money for the murder from Charles to the hitman. First you hear, first of all, the only evidence to that is Jessica Rodriguez and Luis Rivera. They can't get their story straight. As much as they tried, as much prepping that probably went on, even they couldn't get their story straight. Luis, I was at the barbershop when Jessica called me. The records directly contradict that version of events. He actually tried to get on the stand and for the first time say to you, oh, I gave Anthony Ortiz my phone. That's why I'm pinging down here. That's the first time he's ever said that. Do you see what happens when you confront him with something that contradicts what he's saying? He just on the fly tries to fix it. And then I thought Ms. Kappelman just got up here and said that that number is Jessica Rodriguez's number. Isn't it Anthony Ortiz's number? Whose number is it? They actually put up the demonstrative and it still says Anthony Ortiz. But she comes up here and goes, well, it's saved as Jessica. Whose phone number is that? They're supposed to prove to you and have those questions all resolved. But no, it's okay, members of the jury. Just, this person says it's this number and this person. We still don't know whose number that is. And if you believe Luis Rivera, that was Hibaro or Anthony Ortiz, you don't get those phone records to see if maybe he was with Luis Rivera on the first trip? You don't get those phone records to see if maybe there's some... It's willful blindness, members of the jury. That number is actively in the midst of their flurry of communications. And you don't get the phone records? And then, Jessica Rodriguez. First of all, Miss, I want nothing more to do with this case. I wonder why. I'm not even going to waste too much time on her, because that nonsense that she came in here with, You heard what she said to Lewis in that email back in June, the same day that the cops came to speak to her. No matter what, from this point forward, I will do what I can to make sure you come home. You keep that crown on your head. That's what she says to him. After she just lied to Sherry Bennett, or whoever it was that came and interviewed her in June. I don't know anything about anything, nothing to do with Kututo and Katie and none of that. But then what happens when Luis Rivera needs someone to back up his story so that he can get his 19-year deal? Oh, I remember this time when they came to my house. Now, they're going to try their best to try and pigeonhole it to the 19th. Oh, she said 1 month, she said August and September. We played it for you. She's got the days wrong. Then she's all over the place. Oh, I thought it was a brick. You heard what Ryan Fitzpatrick said about the money. It's $100,000. All in hundreds. That's what Luis Rivera said. Stapled. That's not a brick. Okay? That's not a brick of cocaine. And then she, on top of that, says, completely different from what Luis Rivera says, oh, I asked her what was in the bag. I don't know. But then now wants to come in here and change her story again and say something different than what she said before. That is what they brought to you, members of the jury. That is what they brought to you as direct evidence to try and prove that Katie was involved. But no matter how hard they tried, there is not one piece of credible evidence, reliable evidence, that was presented to you as jurors that would allow you to go back into that jury room and say confidently that this is what happened. The only evidence was Luis Rivera, and he is a walking contradiction. Look at what the law says you must consider in this case. Oh no, I think I already have. That's all right. The law also spells out for you where reasonable doubt comes from. It comes from the evidence itself, the lack of evidence, and the conflicts in the evidence. Members of the jury, their case, their theory is littered with all three. Their theory in this case conflicts with reason and common sense. That is reasonable doubt. And then the one major concern that you should have is that the state is actively withholding evidence from you. That should always be a question in your mind, members of the jury. Why? We, by the letter of the law, do not have a burden of proof. We do not have a burden of proof. But that chart, actively reflects what the burden of proof is in this case and what beyond a reasonable doubt really means. When my team actually gets it up, I'll just leave it up there, okay? But this is the truth. This is what it is. This is all not guilty, members of the jury. Maybe something happened. Suppose I believe all of that is not beyond a reason. Probably guilty, not beyond a reasonable doubt. Likely guilty, not beyond a reasonable doubt. All the way up there. That's how high the burden is. You cannot go back into that jury room and say, I think this is what happened, or I believe this is what happened. Not in a criminal case when someone's liberty is on the line. Now remember, Ms. Kappelman gets to get back up here and do a rebuttal. And I'm going to challenge her right now, because I don't get to come back up again. I want her to come up here and present you with one piece, just one piece of solid, reliable evidence. In this case, that doesn't require her interpretation, her speculation, her inference. Something that's just not a coincidence, or maybe this does not happen. Something that isn't, this is consistent with. And she's not going to be able to come up here and present you with one piece of this mountain of evidence that has been introduced in this case. That is evidence that is proof beyond a reasonable doubt that she knew. I challenge her to come up here, point to one thing, and show it to you. And if she comes up again and does not show that to you, and just ignores my question and ignores that alone, members of the jury, lets you know that she's got nothing. She's going to come up here and try to give you the runaround, and how they wish they could get better evidence, and how I don't get to pick my witnesses, and it's not my fault. That's a not guilty. One piece of direct evidence that is not Luis Rivera. Something that is not. I mean, they have hundreds of thousands of text messages, 400 plus recordings. When have you ever seen an investigation of this magnitude that didn't yield something direct? Look at the evidence against Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia. That's evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no question that they were up there and that they went upon that trip. The Prius, like, I could even make an argument, but no, they shut that down because of the unique characteristics on the Prius. That's what separates that Prius from any other Prius in Miami-Dade. Every possible reason that you could have tried to explain to say maybe it's not them, they covered their bases. I'll give them that. That's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And remember, they're charged as a principal. So it doesn't matter which one of them shot Dan Markel, okay? So that is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They have nowhere near brought you anything close to that where you can say, yes, Ms. Magbanua had something to do with it. And that's because she is innocent. That's why, members of the jury, that evidence doesn't exist because she is not guilty. That is how Ms. Magbanua sits here today, living the worst nightmare that anyone on this planet could imagine. Sitting in a jail for a crime you did not commit, knowing all the while that all you have to do to go home is lie. I'm involved and Charlie got me to do this. She got up here and told you herself, I believe he's guilty. I want him to pay for what he did to Dan Markel and also for getting me involved in this nonsense. And all she'd have to do is lie, members of the jury. That's it. But she's not Luis Rivera. No matter what she did, she has stuck to the truth every single time. And she's not going to sink to his level just to buy her freedom. This is another question that Ms. Kappelman, when she gets back up here, is not going to be able to answer you. Why in the world would Katherine not cooperate if she were guilty? Why? She's going to come up here and speculate, maybe this and that. She told you you can't use speculation. What evidence can she show you to say is a legitimate reason why? If she knows that's all they want, if she were guilty, why wouldn't she take the deal? Why? She's going to sit in jail and take her chances on a first-degree murder case with 2 other first-degree solicitation and conspiracy charges? You heard Luis Rivera that he was facing the death penalty on one of those charges. I'm not saying she was, but that's just to show you the level of severity that she is facing. And all she would have to do is just say, yeah, I'm going to tell you your truth, and she could go home. But she's not Luis Rivera. If she does not come up here, Ms. Kappelman, and give you that explanation, something reasonable, something that's based on evidence, it's not guilty, members of the jury. Because there's no reasonable explanation why a guilty person wouldn't take that deal. That is evidence of her innocence. And members of the jury, please, I beg of you, remember that oath that you took at the beginning of this case. The promise you made to look at the evidence in this case objectively. That's what we've been waiting on. We need objectivity. I told you, and so did the judge, leave everything that you thought that you knew about this case at the door. I saw you all waiting during the case at the edge of your seats, waiting for the state to bring you, like she says, the smoking gun that she was involved. Where's that? Where? Was it Luis Rivera? The worst witness to have ever existed on the face of the planet. I have never seen anything like that before in my life. They are asking you to convict Ms. Magbanua on the word of a man who was proven to be nothing more than a liar and who only cares about himself. You are the jurors in this case. You saw the evidence that they brought into this courtroom. That is what you have to base your decision on, the evidence that you saw here. Leave everything outside the door, members of the jury. This is us in here now. We have all been through this together, all of us. The judge, everyone. But it's what it is that you learned, because that's the evidence in the case. Not what's out there in the media, not what is other people's interpretation of what they believed happened in this case. I'm sure you expected way more when you came in here on this case. I'm sure you expected to be like, oh wait, they're gonna give me something. And that's what they gave to you. That unreliable word of Luis Rivero, and nothing more. Go back and listen to the Dolce Vita. That's how confident I am. Because I know for a fact there's nothing on there, because she is innocent. Justice for Dan Markel is not convicting an innocent person of this crime. In fact, it would be a travesty of justice to convict Ms. Magbanua of any of the charges in this case. She is across the board not guilty. And remember, members of, she had nothing to do with this. That's what we're telling you. Nothing, no part of it. The state is throwing all of these charges at you, hoping and praying that you just one of them will stick. That's all they want, just one. But I'm telling you, she is not guilty of all three. Because if she didn't know, members of the jury, she's not guilty. You cannot convict her for having awful taste in men. You cannot convict her because the father of her children is a scumbag. You cannot convict her because she ended up dating Charles Adelson, probably one of the worst human beings on the face of the planet. She didn't know, members of the jury. And what the evidence in this case has proven to you is that she is not guilty of every single count. Please take the time to evaluate the evidence in this case. We have come this far. I'm confident that when you all sit there and you go over everything for yourself, you're going to see that she didn't do this, members of the jury. She's innocent. Find her not guilty.
Thank you, Ms. Kawass.
Thank you. Thank you.